My name is Stan Baines, and I am the chair of this session and steering committee member of the Canadian Network for Imagination and Creativity, or CNIC for short. My fellow imaginative creatives in our steering committee with us this evening are scattered about on your screen, so if you could give us a wave as to who you all are. Perfect. Each month, we are excited to come back to this place and share with you our different topics from our hosts and guests from time to time, and then to the discussions that happen with you afterwards. CNIC's goal is to create and foster open and forward-thinking dialogue as we look to find new innovative ideas, look at things from different angles, see creativity and imagination from different backgrounds and perspectives, ask questions, and explore. It is our hope to expand our minds in new directions, collaborate through idea sharing, create partnerships in our differences, in our sameness, and in our beliefs. Let us find creativity through the exploration of our imagination and ideas. As a resident of Clarence Rockland, Ontario, which sits just outside of the east end of the city of Ottawa in Ontario, Canada, I would like to acknowledge at this time that I am chairing our meeting on traditional unceded land of the Algonquin Anishinaabe territory and people. Let us never grow tired of the stories from yesterday. They let us know where we come from, and together we will write the story of tomorrow. This is a space to learn, explore, and share. We want you to do that in your way to make this idea space your own. Not only do we want to hear your ideas and thoughts, but listening is equally as important. Reflect and participate your way. Our format is very simple. Once our host guides our discussions for the evening, we will open the floor for our chats and conversations to begin and basically see where our journey will lead us through our time together. Zoom is our platform of choice for this discussion, as you can see. Zoom allows us to participate in many different ways. It has built-in controls that allow you to raise your hand so we can see you when we've got this many people on the screen when you wish to join the conversation. And as mentioned before, you can add things in our chat function, which allows you to keep the ideas and thoughts flowing. Share your ideas your way and join our jam. So thank you as always. You have always been so patient and kind in listening to me talk. So we're going to get down to the jam part of our evening. So our topic this evening is being creative when you feel the least creative. So what gets your creative fire burning again? And the host for this chat for this evening is, well, it's me. Right? Yay! You get to listen to me all night long. So hello, everyone. I want to thank you for joining me on this journey tonight. And I hope we can leave here being a little bit more enlightened, as we always are. To join me on this endeavor this evening, I want to introduce to you my wife, Natasha, so she should be somewhere on your screen waving, and also our very good friend, Kaylin Lapine, who should also be somewhere on your screen. So let's get down to business. Everyone has a creative spark. Over the time we've spent with each other here the last few years, we know and have come to understand and appreciate the fact that each one of us and everyone we meet has creativity built into them. It's in the fabric of our existence. Whether it's through writing, music, visual or dramatic arts, crafts, or just about anything. It could be how you build, how you clean, or simply how you wake up in the morning. Either way, creativity is in each of us. We've been exploring the different ways we see things each time we meet. We have seen different perspectives and thoughts. We've challenged each other with new ways to look at things, and we've immersed ourselves into many different aspects of life through creativity and our imagination. Our idea jams this year so far have all been building towards a crescendo of knowledge, and we're still rising. We engage in enriching discussions. We take piqued interest in the things that we haven't done, the things that we have done, and the things that we want to do. The discussions both on camera and in the chats are rich with resources to check out, ideas to share, and concepts to think about. We envelop ourselves in our imaginations and in creative thinking. We literally have an endless supply of resources when it comes to our imagination and creative abilities. But what happens when you just don't feel like it? What happens when that spark that you expect to turn into a fire is simply just a burning ember at the end of its life, ready to turn to ash in the fireplace? Seems a little harsh, but there's more. Many of us in the group actively work in professions, careers, or jobs that require a certain level of creativity to be maintained in order to function within our working environments. It is the basic expectation that you have some level of creativity or imagination to either make the job better, or it's part of what you need to do to get your information across better. These are the teachers, the professors, the professional artists, the speakers, the actors, the actresses, the writers. That list can go on and on. It's imperative within those roles that the level of creativity and imagination is to be creative at its highest, or there's going to be some stalls in the process. The performance will lack, or simply in some instances, the job just won't get done. So, what happens when you just don't want to? What happens when you're just not feeling lit to be able to do it? How do you get that creative fire back, and what starts your process? So I want to kind of look at this from 3 different discussion points this evening and see through our different approaches how we can light that fire when the winds of just plain give up are blowing on us so strong. So to kind of open up what I'm looking for, we're going to take this on a step-by-step kind of journey. I want to see where your process stalls and that gas won't kind of light you up. So I want you to think about kind of 2 opening discussion points here. So what causes your fire either to be hard to light or just not wanting to burn? Or what's the water on your fire to your creativity? Like, what is your immediate stall point that you can see that just kills your process right off the word go? Peter, go ahead.
Bureaucracy. That's one of the first things. There were a couple of things. One would be personal, the other one is professional. But it's the fact that over a period of time, I became numbed to bureaucratic processes. And so I had to intentionalize the fact that I was better than that. But bureaucracy, whether it's in business or whether it's in not-for-profit or whether it's in particularly education, can be absolutely numbing and sometimes hard to get past, except the end result is more important than allowing yourself to be sucked into that rabbit hole.
Wow, that's a really good drop in the hole. Thanks, Peter.
You asked the question.
Yep, no, and that's exactly what I'm looking for, is what's that when you hear that, what's your immediate stop to your creativity? Because what we're going to do as we keep talking is we're going to try and see what other mechanisms kill it off, and then we're going to try and bring it back up. John, go ahead.
I found out last year that I have ADHD, adult ADHD. Nothing, I have a BA in psych, nothing in my life, nothing better explained my life than the behaviors around ADHD. So one of the things around that is depending on the content. So literally, I would rather read Hegel than do my accounting. Doing my accounting, whether it's taxes, it's like this hill, I'm climbing Everest. There's too many steps. I think, I certainly resonate with bureaucracy that Peter is talking about. And often I think that's because of this imposed structure, a time structure, a work rhythm. Also, like my whole life, I've been a night owl. I would get to work and I try to do stuff and only become lucid around 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's when I could do my, if I worked at home, then I could actually get some sleep, start working at 1 o'clock and work until 7, right? I do my hours, but literally there's a circadian rhythm that I think different people have different rhythms. I think that's sort of good to start.
No, that's really good. That's really good. And this is exactly the kind of thing that I'm looking for. Because, once we get into the next chunk, right, that you're going to see how some of that stuff, you kind of alluded to a few things there, John, where a couple things we're going to keep looking at. Gordon.
Well, sort of as a yes and to what our previous speaker and colleague mentioned, my work is at the intersection of creativity and innovation and complex challenges. So I'm kind of geared up and jazzed about things that are complex. But then if I have to do something that I perceive as boring, then all of a sudden the creative impetus
Yeah.
turns off, and I start looking
Mhm.
for my book of Hegel, you know,
Yeah.
as the previous speaker said. So,
Yeah.
so it's a challenge to motivate oneself in this situation.
Mhm.
Well, and it's quite fascinating too, what I've come to see as to what I can see as boring, right? Like there are many things I can be very excited about, but the minute I have to do some intensive work towards it that isn't what I want to do, but it's something that I need to do,
Mhm.
all of a sudden something you can love with such a passion can become very boring very quickly, right? And that's a huge halt to my creativity, is that I like to do the things I want to do, not necessarily the things I need to do when it comes to my creative elements in life. Really good. Anybody else think for a moment, what things can you think of? And I see there's a couple of good things in the chat that just crash your creativity, like where you're on a roll and it just kneecaps you out. Mary. Oh, you got to unmute. Hang on.
Um,
There
I
we go.
find it's really important if I'm doing work, if I'm painting or writing or whatever, to really do it alone. I find having someone else in the room or some critic who's stopping you or asking too many questions in the process that really interferes with it. So criticism is an interesting piece of it. So you have to kind of work with your own thoughts, but if someone else is involved, it can be quite deadening.
Interesting. Yep, I can see from that. I didn't never think about that. I might have been I might have been a stalwart for many people's creativity just by being in the room, right?
Or yeah, critical comment of some kind
yeah.
at the wrong time.
I've got Glennis McQueen. Love it.
Yes. Hi there. I find what absolutely stops me dead unexpectedly is ageism.
Mm.
People see gray hair and say, oh, you're supposed to keep quiet, sit still, and go away. And you think, well, wait a minute. I'm not ready to do that. And they say, too bad, do it, and I find it shocking. I think the expectations for the aged are a huge stop for those of us who are aging. And I think we're losing a lot of rich creativity, and I found in my work situation before I retired, many of the people most guilty of that were colleagues who deeply denied that there was anything ageist about their thought processes. But there were. So yeah, we're not dead yet. So we still have lots of creative ideas. And we won't sit still or be quiet. Sorry.
That's awesome. Thank you. Right. Because there's a whole perspective I didn't
Yeah.
even think of, right? That
Mm.
right. Like, today I was looking at the seniority list. So I work within our school system in town, and I was looking at our secondary schools, the teacher seniority list, and our most senior teacher started teaching now in our board in like 1989. And I thought, we like a whole generation of teachers, like, I was used to looking at the list from the 70s and even a handful of the teachers from the 60s. I was even expecting some from the 80s, like the early 80s, but I was not expecting 1989. Like that was really shocking to me,
Yeah.
right? Because I remember where I was in 1989, which means that whole generation of creativity has now retired out of our system, right? Which is just absolutely fascinating. So it's interesting you mentioned that, because I never would have thought of that as a halt to that. All of a sudden you reach that magic age and people go, thank you very much.
Goodbye.
Off you go. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Wow. Okay. We've got it. We've got kind of Lynn, go ahead.
I wonder how much technology is exhausting us. Like the idea of waking up to email and the number of requests that arrive and just to go through it. So I think the old days of having your office hours and sitting there and waiting for a student to arrive or not, it's a different kind of pace that is quite exhausting, I find.
That's actually an interesting piece too, because there was a time where I always measured going into work as when you get up in the morning and you pull into the parking lot and you need to do that deep sigh first, that before you get out where you're already defeated before you go. It's interesting. That's become increasingly more so when our work doesn't end. Like my job is 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We had a reevaluation, and they recognized we were underpaid, so they paid us, but then they didn't recognize to me what we actually do. Like that part was lacking.
Mhm.
So you still feel undervalued to the
Mhm.
degree that you do when
Mhm.
you're paid for a minimal amount of day but expected to do more, and it just kind of really drags on you. So thank you, and that's
Mhm.
good. Fred.
Like Lynn said, technology can certainly frustrate us and stifle us, but at the same point, it also has been very freeing. As a synthesizer myself, I like to integrate many ideas, and I find that my Twitter feed or X and some of the other resources just stimulate me because I need a multitude of things, and when I'm in a dearth of input, then I feel my creativity doesn't have enough triggers for me. So I look to that. But definitely, I think it's the attitudes of the people around me that sometimes get in the way. And I love the story. 30 years ago, I'm in a staff room and at lunch, and one of the teachers, to make conversation, said, "Oh, what are you reading for engaged reading right now?" And I said, "Oh, Roger's book on Whack Upside the Head and on creativity and imagination." And she said, "Oh, you're weird," and left. And I went to my room and I'm sitting there reading, and I'm reading this thing about you can do the reverse, do the opposite. And I'm looking at my incoming class of grade 8 science students who I have to teach science safety to. So I thought, oh, I'll just say, write me a story that breaks as many rules as possible, and left it at that. And the stories that were coming back were so inspiring and so excited. One ended up with a girl rushing around the room with her hair on fire because she didn't have it tied back, and there was an unintended Bunsen burner nearby. And rather than stop, dropping, and rolling, and somebody else grabbing the fire blanket, one quick thinking student grabbed the teacher's coffee cup to douse the flames, not knowing he was alcoholic. And I just the imagery. And so whenever I see people like that first teacher saying you're weird, I then shared the story, and all those science teachers, the lady included, said, "Can we borrow that?" I said, "Sure, use that idea to teach safety by doing the opposite." But definitely, the temperature in the room when you've got a group like this, we're all inspired. But when you got a group of people that say can't, too much work, uh, that book, Whack on the Side of the Head, had a great list of the attitudes that get in the way. I posted it in the chat. End of soapbox.
Oh, that's excellent, because you kind of hit on my next pivot point. So, right. So we're going to move into the next part. So for me, I need to be creative on a daily basis to solve problems like lack of staffing and a moment's notice. I need to be fairly imaginative, quick thinking on how to manage my staff kind of arguing. So I have to be good at being able to diffuse arguments. I have to use my imagination and creativity in composing a number of memos, presenting courses, because I do that, or even occasionally writing sermons for my church. So what I found is that I'm motivated in my times of not feeling or being creative by what I like to call the motivated by the no choice factor. So this is where there is no other choice but to simply get it done and pour gas on it to keep it burning. Right? I'm usually backed into a corner based on the situation and need to fire up my imagination to get my creativity kind of going to accomplish the task that I need to, and I need it burning on high. I will also find myself in a place where I'm equally normally motivated by the you're running out of time, so you need to get this done wave of creativity, right? That one tends to hit me quite hard. So this usually happens when I've had typically lots of time to prepare for something, like when I have to do a presentation or perform a 40-minute sermon. I will leave it long into the last minute until I'm literally running out of time. And the time factor comes into the play, which is followed very quickly by the no choice one. I found that we've talked about this, that I kind of stop start until I literally am backed into a corner. So you'd figure with lots of time that it would get better, but it actually doesn't. The older I get, I find the worse it gets. So the next question is based on where we can crash, right? Have you ever found yourself being creative or having maybe your best creative moments in a time where you were either motivated by no choice or maybe even running out of time? And how did that actually work out for you? So you're at your absolute worst and you have to do something. What's that looking like for you? John, go ahead. Oh, you got to unmute. There we go.
Sorry, I was thinking of sort of the previous when I put up my hand,
That's
but
okay.
it's sort of I've been reading J.G. Ballard recently. Now, J.G. Ballard was one of the first of the new wave of sci-fi writers in the sort of late 50s and 60s. Asimov and Heinlein were the sort of the big guys, right? And J.G. Ballard, uh, his book was a movie made by Steven Spielberg, and Christian Bale was his first appearance as the main character, just so if you to frame who J.G. Ballard is. But he loved the surrealists. And I've got a laptop with two screens and wish I had an interface for digitally organizing various projects, right? And it's like I find the digital environment is different. So with ADHD, you walked into my office and you saw dunes, but I was the archaeologist, and if you wanted that, I could go to and pull it out. I've realized that, oh, I have to file to surface area. If I actually file it away, it's gone. I heard of other ADHD people have hangers everywhere, and it's like, oh yeah, if you don't see it, you forget you have it. And so, unlike with paper and material, that a lot of us grew up with, it's really hard to keep visual presentations of the various pieces you're juggling to do, whether it's a single work like writing a book or an important paper or organizing an event. And so I don't know if we have imposed the digital device into a format we're familiar with, like the book, and all our metaphors are all about that sort of stuff. And that keeps us thinking that we're working in the same way when really, sensorially, like I can't file to a surface area. And, I have tab farms, you know, 3 instances of Chrome with tabs so small you can barely see them, but I know where they are and I can manage that. And so maybe that question you're asking around constraint is that we are really working in a medium with hugely different affordances that we are bringing to sort of deeply assumed ways of working and organizing and dealing with things. This my contribution.
No, that's a really interesting take, because as I kind of look around the room here on the screens, right? Most of us, regardless of our age, we come from similar generations, right? So we all attended school the same way, we all learned the same things, and it's only been within the last 20 some odd years or so that there's been a really big dramatic shift in how we've done things. So if I said to the majority of the crowd here who went to school in Canada, at least, when you were in high school, you took general level courses, you took advanced level courses. Those are not unfamiliar terms. Whereas now we've got things like, college and university, and we have schisms, and we have all these weird nifty little terms that when you work in the environment, they make sense to us. But if we were to just be all of a sudden immersed in these environments, this is going to be very strange, because we would go, what's happened to education here, rightly or wrongly, right? But as you said, John, because the technology now is the way it is, right? We're used to a very familiar way of doing things. So I find, for my creativity purpose, I was talking to somebody today, about the difference between reading a book or reading something on something digital. I am very digital. Like, I'm Generation X, so most of today's technology came as I was growing up, so we were very familiar with this. But I find, for my comfort, that my youth, that allows me to be very technologically savvy. Like right now, what you don't see is I'm surrounded by at least 7 or 8 monitors. Like, I'm in a wall. I look like I'm running the Matrix here. But my comfort level still falls to the most basic of things, like a book. If I'm going to read, I want a book, because I find the digital world will actually halt my creativity because it overwhelms me with too much, right? So if I want to focus on something, okay, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write my speech for this evening. I'm going to write out what I'm going to say. Well, then something will come up. Oh, I need to Google that. So then I look at the screen over here. Well, this is really nifty. I should probably watch a YouTube video about it over there. And then while I'm watching a YouTube video, well, maybe I should go make a coffee, because now I have to, until all of a sudden I get lost in what it is I was doing, right? So yeah, our own creativity can be stifled by the very things that are there to help us be creative. Jennifer.
I was just going to comment. I have ADHD, and not the kind that people throw around to say they're disorganized, but like the neuropsych, mind mapped, like cognitive battery diagnosed kind of thing. And one of the things I've learned since I've been diagnosed for a while now is that when you're having creative moments, you don't need to judge the way they come out. So like, if you're working on like an essay and you feel like you should handwrite it, and you need that special kind of paper that only is sold at that store with that pen, then that's the way that that happens. And the judgment that surrounds how our creativity is delivered, I think, is very real. When I'm in my creative moments, there's Post-it note, whatever my creativity needs to express itself, I try to have on hand so that it comes out in the way that it needs to come out. It's kind of like, you know, you're raising your children. You give them what they need in the environment by providing them with their tools. So like birthing ideas or the creativity that's in your head, I just try to have a whole palette or an array of things at my disposal so that the creativity comes out as it's meant to come out. And the real hard part of that was getting over the judgment of others or the judgment of the process, like just being free to let it flow into whatever it needs to be. So like when I worked on my dissertation and I was typing a lot, my brain wasn't, you know, we know now there's a different process between typing and handwriting. I needed the handwriting. So I hand wrote the last 94 pages. And I just went to Target and bought like a ton of really nice paper. And I just sat on my couch with a Netflix show on and I just wrote out the 94 pages and then I would type it. And that's how that came out. And that's okay.
Thanks, Jennifer. Okay, I like where this conversation is going. So, okay, I'm going to kind of hold things all over the place. I want everybody's more than welcome to jump in at the point. Just if we move to a next section, if you want to talk about the 1-2 back, that is just fine. But I'm going to pivot shift a little bit, and I'm going to introduce my good friend Kaylin, who's somewhere on the screen. I've lost her. All right, there you are. So go ahead, Kaylin, with your chunk, and let's see what conversations that generate.
All right, so I'm Kaylin. I just want to thank everybody for allowing me to be here. I really feel very lucky to have been surrounded tonight by everybody here, and Sam and Natasha for inviting me, right? So mine is creativity and comfortability. So I'm sure at some point we've all had a general lack of motivation that causes us not to be creative. That's pretty normal, right? But have you ever considered that sometimes you're unmotivated because you're uncomfortable with the task or maybe the environment in which you have to be creative? So I find that my comfortability levels can severely impact my creativeness, right? So basically, it's a lack of familiarity with the things around me or what I'm tasked with doing. So tonight, I'm not at my house. I plan to be at my house, but I'm currently sitting in a supervisor's office because I'm at work. So that doesn't help, right? So for you, maybe this could be something similar to this. Maybe, you know, it's you're going to present something, but then you got lost on the way to wherever you're going, and then you couldn't find the parking, and then you couldn't find the room, and then you get there and you're a little frazzled and you're uncomfortable and you don't really know what's going on, and you don't know anybody or you can't see them, and then everything's uncomfortable, right? So I work right now as a chief custodian, and I'm our local educational services officer with the union. So that's why I'm here tonight in the building. So with each of these, jobs, I have to talk to people who I don't know in places where I haven't been, changing situations with a variety of big and little people, right? So it's all pretty anxiety inducing or just straight up uncomfortable. So my uncomfortability or anxiety will limit my creativity and take the spark out of me. So if there's any time when I feel the least creative, it's then. I will sometimes rely on colleagues or use familiar experiences to help me get my spark back, or sometimes hide behind my note taking and agenda making type of paperwork because I like that. And it brings me back to a level of comfortability that will allow me to be creative under my own terms, right? To which I say, finally, thank you very much. But do you see yourself in this? Have you ever lost your creative spark because of unfamiliar things or uncomfortability? Maybe you have and you never noticed. So with that, I have a couple questions. So have you ever experienced a difficult uncomfortability that hinders your creative spark? What was that, right? What has lit your creative fire back to full flame in your moments when you were the least comfortable or anxious? And I can't see anybody's hands up, so I'm sorry.
No, I can deal with that. Goran, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, and thank you for that wonderful invitation and question. I mean, most of us here, or many of us here, certainly are facilitators and or coaches, or helping others to, in one way or another, achieve their most creative states, or working with teams and so on. And I certainly felt like I was reasonably accomplished in these areas until, a few meetings or workshops I was leading when really intense conflict, develops. And it creates a kind of an atmosphere that almost pushes you back into the reptilian brain and kind of like away from the frontal lobe. And one really has to struggle. I find myself sometimes struggling as a facilitator to not go into the fight or flight, but to just kind of go, okay, just stay in the facilitative space, just work with these comments and stay in the creativity. But one is sometimes successful in these endeavors. It's just that it feels as if when there is an intense kind of conflict that might occur in the room, this has a capacity to kind of throw us off our creative horse, as it were.
Yeah, exactly. That's an uncomfortable situation. It's an uncomfortable environment to have to be in, right? Especially when you can't like exit stage left and get out of it, right? So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Actually, Goran, you raise a really good point. I often wondered what that was. So I do a lot of presenting, I do a lot of talking, and none of which I register generally to me as being creative. It's really interesting. It's kind of really a mind shift I have to put in there. I always view it as something I just need to do and I just deal with it. But when I'm faced with that, so for instance, coming up to things, I'm a very comfortable speaker during things. Leading up to it, there's that worry. What if the information doesn't go across? What if all that work is for naught? What if people are gonna sit there and nod their head at you, but it's not sinking in, and you go into absolute panic mode. But yet, like you said, you have to swallow every last bit of it. Like, I mean, I have a story. My youngest son had to go do a presentation at his school, and the poor guy, like, I mean, I like him because he came home and he told us this very proudly, unfortunately, but he said he got right up there into the front of he was ready to go. He got up there to the front of the class and he looked at everybody. He basically froze and peed himself. Right. And just like that, right? He did the cardinal thing. So he comes home and he's telling us this very straight faced. So I'm like, you did what? He's like, yep. He's like, I took one look. He's like, I panicked, I peed, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done. And he just walked off. And I thought, my goodness, I can't tell you, son, how many times I wanted to do that myself. Right. But I thought, so I said to him, what are you going to do? He's like, well, he's like, I'm going to deal with it. He's like, I'm going to go back in tomorrow and I'm going to do my speech. And that's what he did. And he didn't bat an eye about it. I said, your friends bother you? He's like, yeah. He's like, they laughed a little bit, but off they went. But it was that we hit that moment where everybody's staring at us and you just kind of want to run off the stage. But yeah, it's amazing how quickly your anxiety can take you over. But as we know, and as Goran pointed out, there's so many of us where, yeah, you can't kind of do any of that in front of your classroom full of kids or your lecture theater full of university students, right? But it's amazing where anxiety can kind of can kind of hit you. Anybody else? Go for it, Peter. Oh, you're muted too.
Sorry, I'm just looking around to make sure nobody else wants to speak. I'm going to go back to what I started with. So many things that have been said resonate me. How many times have I stood up in front of an audience and looked at them, and I know in my mind, especially when I'm talking to the hierarchy of educational leaders, most of what I'm going to say, they will not want to hear. I know it. Because when you stand in front of an audience of superintendents and principals and say, we're upside down, and because of the way we interpret and manifest leadership, the way we interpret and manifest who's intelligent and who's not, and who's creative and who's not, they don't want to hear it because you are going right for the jugular. So yeah, on many occasions, I've almost done what your son did, but I'm a little older and got through that. So yeah, there have been, again, it comes back to this idea of the stifling of bureaucracy. But what the strategies I learned to overcome, when I feel myself going down into that rabbit hole, which I so detest, and I speak all the time about this, don't go down it, because yeah, the very person who talks about it often does. I think you know what I do, Stan. I've developed the strategy of reaching out to the couple of people that I know, it's not a couple, it's more than that, but I can really, I've done it with you once or twice, Stan, from many thousands of miles away, and with a couple of others. That's what I do. I reach to my network. And I think that when people don't do that, that's when they can get themselves in trouble.
Interesting. Thank you, Peter. And yeah, that's very true, right? So, and I heard Mary say before she likes to be on her own. So to save the criticism, I like to operate like that as well. But then equally, yes, I'm better at supporting other people. So when you and I speak, right, I'm better at doing that than I am to receive it, because I'm more like Mary. I just kind of need to just be kind of quite nicely. But it's fascinating how we deal with that, especially too when you're backed into that corner of, yeah, you still have to do it. It's a now or never. It's not like you get to just pack up your toys and go home. So especially for those of us like yourself, where this is what we do. We present, we create, we talk about innovation, we speak to people about how to tap into their ideas. Well, if that is what you're doing, yeah, you don't get to back out as you're about to get up on stage, right? So really interesting. Thanks, brother. Teresa.
Hi, Peter just sort of triggered my thoughts to an area of, I often think, am I creative enough? Do I have enough original thought? Is there enough, am I just restating the obvious? And I find that really stops me from producing things sometimes, because then I start trying to understand if it is an original thought, and then I just give up because it seems to take too much energy, or I feel like maybe it's not. And the second thing is, because I put a lot out into the public domain, and sometimes around very male dominated or oriented areas, sport, specifically hockey, I often think, do I have the energy for the backlash? Do I have the energy to put up with all of this stuff that's going to come back to me that has nothing to do with the content that I put out necessarily, but is just a vibe that is being out there? So I find those things sort of drain me on, they make me probably less productive than I am. And sometimes I also think, if I feel like this needs to be said and it makes me uncomfortable, that's why I have to say it. So it can go both ways, I guess.
Yeah, Peter, did you want to respond?
It is a direct response. 30 seconds. Man, have you nailed it, Teresa. It's the imposter syndrome, and I've suffered from it all of my life, because the education system told me by the time I was 17 years old that I was stupid. Now, a lot of people would concur with that to this day, but I'm telling you, that had more of an impact on me. I don't go around talking about this all the time, but you just nailed it. And to this day, I have to overcome that. And that's why I reach out to others and say, help me think this through. because don't go down that rabbit hole, Teresa, because that's not you. That's society that does that.
Well, and I'm sorry, I'm going to respond to that. I think the education system taught me, because I wasn't great at the art that they asked us to do. I didn't see myself as an artist, therefore I was not creative, when actually there are a million other ways to be creative, but I didn't understand that until much later, and then was confused about being a creative person that people considered creative, and I was like, no, I'm not. I can't draw.
It's fascinating.
Yeah.
Thanks, Teresa. Glynis.
With respect to what those of us who teach or present and so on, what I discovered was that creativity is an emergency response, because in classrooms, when you get those students who ask a question about what you're teaching them because they don't understand, and you can't just say, see me after class. You've got to come up with the answer right then. I suddenly realized being put in that kind of a corner is the best spark to creativity, because you've got to come up with an answer. And sometimes those answers are trampolines into a lot. I've found that those kinds of answers that I thought, I don't know what to say here, but you got to say something, and you have to very quickly work it through in your own mind, become the basis for even more creative thinking after, when you go back and relive that moment of, oh, wow. And I find that it just opened up new fans. So I started looking for those scary moments in class, making sure that the atmosphere was such that the kids could ask the really difficult questions that they didn't understand. I didn't understand either, but I had to come up with something really quickly. And I find teaching as an improvisational creative act just the best thing in the world. So, and I miss it. So.
Well, thank you, Glynis. That's perfect, because that actually is going to lead us right into our last point, because that's a perfect point to pivot on. So I'm going to introduce everybody to my wife, Natasha. Natasha, have at her. It's all yours.
I'm always so inspired by these conversations, and tonight it's like the amount of insight sort of into myself and the encouragement that I'm taking from this is incredible. Like, John, Jennifer, Teresa, like, you guys are all speaking my language, right? Like, and I drive Stan crazy because my desktop on my computer, John, I didn't understand it. I think it's like those hangers all over the place, because I have folders all over the place, because if I put a folder somewhere, then I'm going to forget about that thing, right? It doesn't matter if it's, 3/4 of my day tomorrow, it's hiding and it doesn't exist anymore. And Teresa, I don't consider myself to be creative at all. I can't draw. As a matter of fact, I've worked in the school system. I'm an educational assistant for years, and I'd have kids who would come up to me and they would be like, can you draw me a sheep? So I would do this like absolutely pathetic little like oval and legs and, curly things. And the kid would look at me like, are you kidding me? Like, that's awful. Even I could do better than that. And then they would go away, they would sit down, and they would, sort of start drawing something that they gave up doing before they even tried. And they knew, if nothing else, they were better than mine. So my not being creative was sort of my way of trying to empower those kids to feel more confident in their creative process. So like Stan said, we're busy. We are often caught by the busy bug. And, it's always that, you have to be creative because, well, you've left it to the last minute and now you're out of time. So you have to figure out how you're going to do it and kind of jump around in those spaces. So I find sometimes what helps me, because I can get very sort of down and frustrated because it's like, oh my goodness, I'm not creative. I need to be creative. How can I do this? So, at the end of the day, after, we've been running from one place to the next, it doesn't feel like there's been time to breathe, let alone have any time for creativity. I'll start the day and it's like, okay, I've got that fire and it's like, today's going to be an awesome day. And I've got my to-do list in my head, and not 30 seconds, there's a phone call and it's completely derailed the whole process. And then the end of the day, I'll kind of step back and reflect. And it's like, somehow, throughout the day, we've danced from one place to the next, come up with new and creative ways to put off something today that, I can do tomorrow or the week after, or just put it off till it disappears. Created, those marvelous works of fiction called emails that you've answered, the same person 6 different times, trying not to make them feel dumb. Right. And the end of the day, it's like, maybe you've even made a gourmet meal, or at least something slightly better than craft dinner. But when you look back, it's like, okay, even in the mundane and the everyday, I find that I can light my fire by seeing, well, I'm already in the fire, right? I may not be in the flames that I thought I was going to be at the end of the day, but, sort of just thinking about where you've been able to be creative can help bring out some of that creativity. So has, sort of similar to, I think, what Jennifer was talking about, pens, I was thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my goodness, I've done that. So has there anybody, I'm going to throw it out there, where you felt stuck in trying to figure out how to be creative, only to find out that you've been creative the whole time, just maybe a different way than what you had originally started?
Mary.
So it was a really interesting conversation. One thing that's so striking to me is how I would say almost consistently we tend to narrow our definitions of creativity greatly to our detriment. So often I hear people say, I can't draw a straight line, or I can't even draw a stick figure. Actually, I've taught drawing a lot, and it's really hard. It takes many, many hours of practice and incredible fortitude on the part of both the teacher and the student, if they're really unfamiliar with it. And there are so many other ways to be creative, and opening up that definition and not thinking of even art making as being the answer, but all sorts of ways of thinking of alternatives and choosing routes that are appropriate to the situation. That seems to me the real manifestation of creativity.
Thanks, Mary. John.
I mean, it's really interesting, because I feel I can resonate with a lot of things. I worked as a futurist, and in that I did a lot of public speaking. And that always, I always liked that. I'm an introvert, but I really liked the public speaking. And it seemed to me, I realized it's a type of performance art. And I think what I hear is that everyone here is a professional communicator of some sort. And to be a communicator is to perform, and there's a whole psyche around the creativity of performance, right? There's an improv and a sense, a new type of sensing, a dependence on really other there for us to sort of tap into that, the truly spontaneous answer or way of influencing somebody. And I think when we're serious communicators, our creativity is in our performance.
Yeah, I think John, yeah, you got it. And Mary, that's a very good point. And I will get lost in what I'm doing for the work of what it is. I forget that there's a joy and a passion to things, right? Or I'll be evasive about my creativity sorry, I'll be evasive about what I'm doing and lack the ability to see the creativity in it for the work that's involved. So for instance, I was supposed to do this idea jam last year, right? And managed to get out of it because I thought, what a lot of work. So I'm going to give it away to somebody else to do, not realizing the joy and the passion in doing this, right? And look, we've already almost kind of ran out our hour just from that. But like Teresa had said, right there, because I don't view that as creative, when I'm done, I crash. Like the minute this is over, it's like it's drawn so much energy from me, but it's positive energy, right? And that's where I think Natasha had a really good point in that, yeah, a lot of the times we will forget that while we're busy trying to light a fire on something else, we're actually standing in the middle of one, and we're not actually realizing the warmth that level of creativity or imagination is actually bringing to us, right? So thank you for that. Jennifer.
All right, I'm gonna pledge before the group this. I've been avoiding talking to Peter for like a year because he draws creativity out of me at such a rate that I'm exhausted afterward. Also, I laugh so much my face feels like it's stuck in a smile.
Amen.
So I'm just gonna honor the promise I made him that I will call him and come visit with him, because he is a thought buddy for me and he really does bring out the best light that I have. And I deeply apologize for not allowing that to happen. But I don't know if anybody else gets stuck here, but my Maslow, you all are from Canada. I'm from America. It's hard here. I don't know what it's like up north, but the dailies of life are very stressful for us. And just kind of getting our basic needs met, creativity really isn't a priority in our culture right now. So I strive in my work every day to be creative and inspire creativity, but it is exhausting. And so I come here for an outlet, like many others have said, and I plan on going to the Scenic Conference to kind of fill that bucket up. But I think we just need to keep reminding one another that that's so, so important. So thank you for this evening. It's been really great.
You know, I think that right there is kind of what we were going for. When I set out to do this originally, I was looking not necessarily for that magic answer. One of the things I love about our group is that we're not answer finding. We're looking for ideas and innovation, and we're looking for where other people are coming from. And you, Jennifer, you raised a really good point, right? Peter was actually one of my main motivating factors as well to get me out into the world. He saw things I didn't see in myself. He continues to see these things. And while I'm busy looking at the busy of life and I'm looking at the mundane things, and I view a lot of the creative things that I do as work, we need to remember, how do we refill our bucket? Like you said it right there. You said it right there. Lindsay, I will, you're going to be our last thought for the night.
Really short, just coming in halfway through and just witnessing the beauty and intimacy of the conversation, not like any other that I've attended before. So the topic really seemed to bring out very personal truths. And I just, it's just so beautiful. I wished I was here at the beginning. Thought I would share that.
Well, thank you. And I think that as we kind of close up, and I'll wrap myself up before I do our official close. One of the things we really go after in our idea jams, doesn't matter what we're talking about, is that level of intimacy. I love when people listen, but I love more when we're talking and we're sharing. We're writing in the chats, right? Like, I mean, I've been watching the chats go all night, and we always do this. But when something can really touch you and get sort of right in there, and now we're not talking about a general concept, we're talking about your creativity, your imagination, what sets you on fire, right? Because we all have those moments of high glory, and then we have those moments where we might stand on the stage and pee ourselves. But either way, we get through them, right? We get through them. And I think what touched me about this and what I needed to know for myself was that I'm not alone, that I can get lost in my thoughts. I can be overwhelmed in the technology. I can be confused enough that I'm bored and I'm excited all at the same time. But when you reach that end, when you hit that crescendo, right, and you get to have that crash at the end, you crash at a place where there's a feeling of joy and contentment. So one of the things I will talk about in my sermons is the difference between being happy and having joy and contentment. When you're happy, happy has peaks and valleys. It comes and goes. contentment and joy tend to follow you through, so that no matter what it is you're doing, you will always have that base level of contentment and joy. So I do say for tonight that no matter what crashes your creativity, no matter what water is attempting to put your fire out, as long as you keep a little spark burning somewhere in the background, your flame will never be extinguished. So I thank you all very much for joining me. I thank you, Natasha and Kaylin, for posing the questions, and I thank you all very much, extremely, for participating and for and for waiting on me for 2 years to get this done. So now after this, I get to crash, right? So, my friends, we do want you to know that Scenic is socially connected. So check out our website at www.canadiannetworkforimaginationandcreativity.com. We've refreshed it, so it's looking better than ever. We can also be found on Instagram, Facebook, X, and YouTube. Find us online for more information and links to register for Idea Jams, to share that information with your friends, for our bios, to view our past Idea Jam sessions in the chats, and other helpful information as to what's coming up. Speaking of which, April is very fast approaching. Thank goodness spring is coming. But that means so is our Odyssey of Discovery. So Scenic is going to be having our first ever live experience happening on April 19th and 20th right here in Ottawa, Canada. Our event, called Odyssey of Discovery, promises to be an event to remember, and we are actually really excited about this. So please stay tuned to all of your usual channels on this for any further enlightenment that we will be bombarding you with very shortly, because more details are about to come very quickly. But if you're super duper excited, and we hope you are, you can always touch base and contact one of our steering committee members, Michael Wilson, at mpwilson@uottawa.ca, and he will be more than happy to fill you in on what's up. So as I close for the evening, I again want to really thank you for joining us this past hour. This has been very enriching. I feel very fulfilled. I always do with our Idea Jams, but this one's a lot more personal, of course, because this was our session with me, and I really appreciate the conversations and the thoughtfulness of all of this. So thank you for being here tonight, and I really hope that you're going to join us again next month in March. Our topic for March will be Making the Extraordinary Happen, and that will be hosted by my very good friend and my goofy partner, who will phone me at 2 o'clock in the morning from someplace in the world and just wow, right? Mr. Peter Gamwell. So please make sure to join us next month in March. So on behalf of all of our steering committee members, on behalf of Scenic, we do wish you a great night, a wonderful end to your week, and please enjoy the remainder of February. We're over halfway now. The month is almost done. Spring is coming, right? And we're glad you made it with us here this evening. So we are looking forward to seeing you again. Have a great night, everybody, and have a good night.
Have a great night, everyone. Bye.